Greetings and welcome to another episode of Pinball Stories. Mike here, and today I'm going to talk about this beautiful game, Bally Air Aces. This is a game I've been looking for a long time. And I probably talked about that when I did a little pinball showcase on this with the gameplay, because this game is just absolutely beautiful. And there's a funny story about how I came to get this game, and some interesting creative wheeling and dealing. This is a game showed up on Craigslist. Well, let me back up a little bit. In the previous one, I talked about Raven, which I know that wasn't necessarily the most exciting story. I apologize, but I'm just trying to be as comprehensive as possible going over games in my collection. But this game, I do remember playing when I was a kid, and this game kicked my ass. This was a really tough game. It has the row of drop targets in the front, and it's a real drain fest. This is the game you put a quarter in, and literally 8 seconds later, the game is over, and you're like, what happened to my money? It was brutal. Brutal game. Kicked my ass. I hated it. I would go into the arcade as a kid, and I would see this game, and I would I'm not playing you. It'll be the biggest waste of a quarter ever. And at some point, I'll be I'll be doing well on other machines, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to take a crack at Air Aces. I put a quarter in, boop, bam, lose all my money. It was I just remember it being just a really brutal game. It was one of those games that made me realize that Bally is a much harder game to play than, say, Gottlieb's. Gottlieb's and Williams's and Stearns, they all were, a little bit easier sometimes, but some of these Bally's were they were brutal. So when this showed up, and I think it was on Craigslist, I jumped on it. I really wanted this game. I went over and I talked with the woman, and maybe it didn't show up on Craigslist. Maybe this is one of those scenarios where somebody knew somebody who had a machine, and I go over to this, house. There's another suburban location, and it's really weird. The house basically looks like somebody has ransacked it. It's not well kept on the outside. It doesn't look like anybody's really been living there a whole lot lately or whatever. So I come to the door. Woman answers the door, kind of a middle-aged, slightly pretty-looking woman with a huge wine glass. I mean, I hesitate to say it was a wine glass. It was more like a wine. What would you call it? No, it was. It literally if you like to drink a bottle of wine a day, and your doctor said you could only have one glass of wine a day, and you found a kind of bottle that you could pour a glass you could pour a whole bottle of wine into. That would be the size. Literally, it was like one of those kind of novelty wine glasses you might see at a baby shower. Oh, I know you can only have one glass. Here you go. Here's your glass. And it was literally 2.5 feet tall and about a foot wide. And this woman is manhandling it in the middle. The stem with this. It's sloshed around. You could have fish in it. It was so big. So immediately, I'm like, okay, and it was 3 p.m, and she had this huge glass of wine. So I'm like, okay, this is going to be interesting. So I go into the house, and the house is largely empty, except that in every room there's just piles of stuff. So it seems pretty obvious that there had been a divorce that had happened, and wherever the kids were and wherever her husband, they were in some other place, and she was there. I don't know the details of that. That's one of those kind of scenarios where you don't know whether or not everybody left so she could come and take some stuff, or she had the house and everybody else had left, or what. But it looked just looked like a wrecked home. So she brings me upstairs, and here's this pinball machine, and it's glorious. It's in really beautiful condition, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I want it. So she quotes me a price, and I'm like, that's a bit high, and I counter, and she's like, yeah, no, I need this money, blah, blah, blah. And this house is really nice that she's in. They actually had an indoor swimming pool in the house, big screened in section with the pool in it, which was kind of covered with a roof. And of course, the water looked like it hadn't been. It looked like it looked like lime jello. It definitely had not been cleaned in a while. I wouldn't have gotten in it, but I guess if you're drinking that size bottle of glass of wine at 3 in the afternoon, you're not getting around to a whole lot. But nice woman, but I'm not judging. It was just, it was interesting. So, she's like, I need this out of here, but here's how much I want. And I'm like, I really don't want to pay that much. And of course, when I turned it on, it didn't completely work. I could see it was in good condition, but there was definitely some problems with it. It wouldn't kick the balls out, and then when I did kick the balls out, it wouldn't advance the balls. Standard kind of stuff, but you never really know. So I was like, you know what? I got to walk away. It was one of those situations where I was like, all right, I really, really, really wanted the game, but I've got some, I've got a certain amount of money that I'm willing to spend per game because of the amount of time, and you get more picky the more games you have. And even though I really wanted this game, I had my limits. And I also kind of thought, given the circumstances, that if I walked away from this, and I don't think this was on Craigslist. If this had been on Craigslist, maybe it might have been something different. Although, again, in my market, it's not that competitive. But so I walked away, but I said to her, look, here's what you're going to need to do to try to get this thing working if you want to keep it. And I go, and I went into all this, do this, 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 and this, and you could see her eyes just kind of glaze over. And I said, here's how much it's worth to me. And this also means, includes the fact that I got to find somebody to come back and help me move this thing down the stairs and all of that. And, so if you change your mind, give me a call back. And from the moment I left, and I think I had a friend with me, and he's like, dude, I can't believe you're walking away from this game. Isn't this one of the games you really wanted? And I said, yes, but trust me, she's going to call me back. And he's like, I bet you she doesn't. And sure enough, like 2 days later, she calls and she's like, you know what? I'll take your deal. If you bring cash, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, all right, bing. So I got it. So it was one of those things where I kind of walked away from the deal. And sometimes, when you meet somebody, you kind of know, they want to get a certain amount of money, but more importantly, they really just want to get rid of it. And I can't tell you how many times I've played hardball with people that would swear to me this is how much they paid for it, and they were lying. I mean, I didn't get this super duper cheap, but I wasn't going to pay. I generally am not going to pay a little bit over market value when it comes from somebody who knows nothing about pinball. And I also knew that she had kids, and who knows what they had done up inside the machine. And I've had situations where I've opened these things up and found that they're, somebody stuffed something in there and screwed everything up. So ended up getting it, walking away from the deal, got called back, and got my Air Aces. And it's a beautiful game. And I've put LEDs in it in some spots and also incandescents. And this is a good example to me of how to tastefully do LEDs in a game. Like, you can't tell that. I'm using warm LEDs. It looks really nice. There's some cool ones in the guy's jacket and his scarf, but warm ones elsewhere. So this, I think it has a nice look. It's hard to tell that it isn't completely original. So that's the story of Air Aces, and how sometimes you gotta let it go and see if it comes back to you. So that's my story there. So anyway, thanks for watching, and for more, visit PinballHelp.com.